I was going to ask you about our evolution. We can go through the entire body and say, like, why do we have the brain size that we have? Why do we have two eyes that face forward? Why do our shoulders have the ability to throw things way better than some of our primate ancestors? But let's just focus on the digestive system and the things you've learned since going carnivore and learning more about the digestive system. What evidence do we have that humans are carnivores, are made to digest meat much better than plant materials?
Yeah, I think I'll go from probably the weakest points. I think maybe the weakest points are we have eyes facing forward. You know, there are exceptions to that with the animal kingdom, etc., where there's herbivores that have eyes facing forward and carnivores that have eyes slightly on the side. You know, same with teeth, dentition. That's not necessarily like the be all end all in terms of that makes us carnivores, you know. I think more compellingly, I like the fact that, well, we have carnivore stomachs. You know, if you look at animals and their stomach and the fluid, how acidic it is, we're right there up, you know, with lions, dogs, and vultures. We're on that side. We're not over here with the cows and the rhinoceros and the rabbits. You know, it's like our stomach is super acidic, and that is made so that we can kill potential harmful pathogens on meat. We used to be scavengers, and also to break down and liberate all those amino acids and the proteins to amino acids and tripeptides so that we could absorb it in the small intestine. Same goes for fatty acids and things like that. But I think another one is the appendix. I mean, that says so much to me. I mean, why would we have an appendix if we're now supposed to eat a plant-based diet? Why would that vestigial part of the cecum be in the state that it's in? It's atrophied so much. That to me shows a trend. It shows this trend of we're not eating as much plant food. We're not eating as much plant foods. We're eating more fatty meat. And then, of course, the combination of the brain size and the colon size. So our colons are sort of half the size relative to other primates who eat leaves all day and eat their own feces to get B12 and things like that, you know? So, I mean, there's that, and the size of our brains and what it's composed of, saturated fats and cholesterol, and also 20% of the lipids are DHA, which comes from things like fish, and you get decent amounts in lamb and some in beef and eggs and things like that. But to me, if you look at the whole picture, eyes facing forward, canine teeth, carnivore stomachs, small colons, massive brains, and like you said, the ability to throw projectiles to kill targets. And we've been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years, evidence of it all over the globe. That was, you know, the fat of the land and the animal. That's what we prized as a food source. It contained everything we needed, and it allowed our brains to develop in such a way. And because they're so expensive, I think perhaps that's why we lost part of our colon, where we don't ferment the fiber like a hindgut digester, and we don't have large cecums like or four-chamber stomachs to actually make use of this fibrous material. Now, when we do, as we partially ferment this in the colon, well, what do we get? We get short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. And people in the plant-based community, we even know this, but they can't put together like, well, first of all, we get short-chain fatty acids from proteins, animal proteins, if that is so important, isobutyrate, isovalerate, isopropionate. But, you know, furthermore, we actually convert or transmute these short-chain fatty acids into ketone bodies like beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is flooding our blood and feeding all of the cells, all of the colonocytes, the cells that line the colon, and not just the ones that conveniently come in contact with this indigestible portion of the plant, the carbohydrate portion of the plant that we can't break down. It's not a nutrient. It doesn't enter the bloodstream. It causes a lot of gas. It's, you know, even methane, and it exacerbates constipation often. And we see, you know, I'm not a big fan of studies because a lot of them really mean almost nothing, you know. But if you look at the best study done on fiber and idiopathic constipation, you have these people on a high fiber, medium fiber, low fiber, and zero fiber diet. And in the zero section, that cohort, it's like all of the symptoms gone. Not one, no straining, constipation, bleeding, you know, no problems whatsoever, all gone. So to me, that's hugely compelling. And when I've cut out fiber as well, I don't get the gas in the bag like I do when I eat plants. It's very telling.
Fascinating.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah, to have that direct evidence with what's going on in your body, I think is absolutely fascinating for sure. And it's so interesting. Recently, I was kind of learning about panda bears, for example, and they are bears just like other bears. They're actually carnivorous, but for whatever reason, something switched in them a few million years ago, where they have to subsist largely on, I believe it's eucalyptus plants, and they have to chew these leaves and the stalks and all these
Like
things. That's how they
pandas or
get their.
koalas? Sorry, which ones are you talking about?
I thought it was a panda bear, and maybe wasn't eucalyptus, but
Yeah, I think the
am I
koalas
getting
eat
that wrong?
eucalyptus. Yeah, yeah. Koalas eat eucalyptus. Pandas eat
Okay.
bamboo. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bamboo. No, it's bamboo. You're right. It's a panda
Bamboo,
bear
right?
with bamboo. Maybe the same thing happens with koala bears. I'm not aware, but I know for sure with panda bears, they have to they have to subsist on this one plant and they have to eat all day long and they have terrible gut issues. Every few days they'll like go and like lay in the side because they have issues like IBS and IBD, the things that we suffer from. And the amount of matter that they have to pass through is like pounds and pounds and pounds every single day. It's quite interesting.
Right, right. I've not actually looked into that. I know
It's
that
fascinating.
some of these animals have adapted to eat certain plants that are so toxic that other animals just leave them alone.
Yeah,
Like I think that
yeah.
is koala bears, isn't it? Like the
It's
eucalyptus.
along yeah, it's along those lines that even after whatever switched for them millions of years ago, where they are at least able to, maybe there was a shortage of the food they were eating before and they adapted to eat this, but even then they're still dealing with issues, and it's been millions of years. To think that we would be able to adapt to high fiber foods so
Yeah.
quickly is kind of funny if you think about it. And we hear all the time that we evolved eating fibrous foods, we adapted to eating fibrous foods, like I said. I'm thinking around my neighborhood. It's September here in the Salt Lake Valley. It's been a pretty good growing season. Lots of things have grown around me. Maybe it's my lack of ancestral wisdom, but I just don't see like tuberous plants growing everywhere that would be edible, even if I knew how to find them, to cook them, to prepare them in some way. We also, in my neighborhood, we have gardens. People will rent a garden plot. You see a lot of them all together. I see how much work they do. I used to do gardens, and I know how much work I would put into an entire summer. And now this is the time of year that everything is ripe, everything is growing. You think about all the man hours that went towards cultivating a few plants like tomatoes, maybe some pumpkins. I've seen some corn plants, and you look at these combination of gardens, and I just look and see like how many calories went into the work to cultivate all of these plants, and how long could I subsist on just eating these. And to think like once I've eaten a tomato, that tomato plant is not going to continually give more tomatoes. That might be food for like a day or two for me before I would be completely out of calories and I would be starving looking for more food. And just to think like calorically, if nothing else, the trade-off between how much work you would have to do to cultivate some plants, what you would get out of them, it's not even close. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think edible plant foods are seriously scarce. Obviously, we've gone about coming up with these different farming practices so that we can make these foods available. But yeah, like you say, I mean, how long are you going to be able to last until your B12 runs out? And like you better find some kind of animal, fish, game, most likely, just so you don't die. That you need to find some every so often at least, even if you are going to eat mostly plants. But of those plants, I mean, what are you actually getting out of it? um, non-native plants as well that we've forced to grow out of dirt because it's not even soil anymore. It's crazy what's happening. The situation what we're in, but the landscape changes all the time. So I mean, throughout history, all these different animals have gone extinct for all sorts of reasons. And if you think that we most likely hunted a lot of the our food sources to extinction, I don't know 100%, but most likely we hunted a lot of those megafauna to extinction, and we had to figure out what we're going to do. And because we are so intelligent, so creative, we obviously figured out how to, I suppose, during certain times, we can grow grains and store grains, and that got us out of trouble. But that doesn't mean that we should be eating whole grains with every meal every day. Far from it. They're some of the worst things to consume, in my opinion. The whole grains,
Yeah,
just
I
like
agree.
seed oils.